Welcome to the Health Trip Podcast. My name is Jill Foose. I'm a functional medicine and integrative nutrition health coach. I created this podcast to bring you along as we travel down intriguing, science-packed roads, debunking old medical paradigms and perusing new innovative therapies and modalities with the finest functional medicine doctors, practitioners, and like-minded biohackers while living our best life. Enjoy the show. I've been a self-biohacker for decades. I'm constantly trying new things that will help me optimize my health and age gracefully. Since I was 16 years old, I've been searching for the optimal diet for myself, the most effective form of exercise, how to get the deepest, most restorative sleep, stress management techniques, getting various labs taken for comprehensive blood work and genetic information, purchasing devices to help me stay cool all night during perimenopause, serums and red light therapy caps to encourage healthy hair growth, and of course, how to keep my skin supple and young. I take various supplements based on all of that data that I have collected. And once you think you have your equation, something changes and you may need to go down a different path. It's a process that requires being open to change, having patience, accepting that there may be setbacks, and being diligent and intentional about your lifestyle. It's hard work, but aging gracefully and feeling the best I can are my priorities. My quality of life is at the top of my list. During one of my recent podcasts, my guest brought up a relatively new supplement on the market called Primeadine. After hearing a brief description of this supplement, I knew I had to find out more. My guest today is Leslie Kenny, founder and CEO of Oxford Healthspan and the supplement Primeadine. Leslie is a Southern Californian entrepreneur, a certified health coach, and graduate of both Berkeley and Harvard, whose life was turned upside down when she was diagnosed with lupus and rheumatoid arthritis in her 30s. When her doctors told her lupus had a life expectancy of 5 years and that RA could only be managed, not cured, she set out to optimize her health as best as she could with safe, natural solutions. She went back to school at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition in New York City, became a bulletproof coach under health pioneer Dave Asprey, and took on health coaching clients worldwide. At the same time, she began helping life science academics in European universities, including Oxford, where she lives, to raise money for their discoveries. At a meeting with one such scientist, she learned about a natural compound called Spermidine, abundant in Natto, a traditional Japanese dish that she had grown up with. Spermidine was showing great promise supporting health as we age. The science was compelling. One scientist even calls it an anti-aging vitamin in a published scientific journal, and it was safe. Still, because it was natural, food-derived, and not a drug that would bring in more money, no one was interested in promoting it. Spermidine wasn't available in the US or really even known here. And spotting this unmet need, Leslie decided to bring it to the US herself. Today, at age 56, Leslie is living proof that we can get better with age, so long as we take responsibility for our health and meet our doctors halfway. Welcome, Leslie. So excited to have you here.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Jill. So lovely to meet a fellow biohacker and someone who is just getting better with age, me.
Oh, well, I am really excited to venture down this path and talk about Spermidine. And for all of my listeners out there, I started taking this supplement about 3.5 weeks ago. So haven't seen a ton of differences, but I know that they lie ahead. And so share with us your journey and how it ultimately led you to Spermidine and starting your business.
So you mentioned in the intro that in my 30s, I had been diagnosed with multiple autoimmune conditions, and that happened after a very intense period of professional career activity for me. I had been in Hong Kong, and I had a venture capital backed online matchmaking company. So I was a pioneer in online matchmaking in Asia Pacific. And we went through the boom and the bust, and it was extraordinarily stressful. And after a number of years, I was very lucky to be able to get a Japanese company to acquire those assets, and went to Colorado with my husband to try to start a family. And he was quite anxious about this. He's younger than I am. My biological clock was ticking faster. And we tried and tried, just could not get pregnant. And at the same time, I noticed that my hands, I was having trouble turning doorknobs, using scissors. It was actually one Christmas, I had been making handmade Christmas ornaments and cutting them out for the tree. And I could not use the scissors. And I thought, well, that's strange. I'll have to go see my doctor. And it was at that point when I got that call that nobody wants, where the doctor, it's not the nurse that calls to say, oh, here are your blood test results. It's actually the doctor. And the doctor says, would you mind coming in? Your test results are back. But they don't tell you what those results are. And clearly not a good sign. So, get into the office. She has me sit down. She says, well, now we know what's causing the pain in your hands. It is rheumatoid arthritis. I'm thinking arthritis, this is something that old people have, right? I'm only 39. And she said, well, there are things we can give to you. There are injectables. So I think I got boxes of Enbrel and then Humira. And she said, you've also got lupus, which I had never heard of before. Wasn't sure what it even meant. And I said, oh, and so what's the medicine for that? And she said, unfortunately, there isn't a treatment for that. And I said, so, but wait a second, I'm doing an IVF round right now. This is like my 4th IVF round. And I really need to do this and get this all taken care of before the next round. Plus I'm doing donor eggs. You don't know how important this is. And she looked at me sympathetically and just said, I'm not sure about that. And you probably have 5 good years left. And it's because these cytokines, these inflammatory markers in my body of tumor necrosis factor alpha and cytokines, they were so high. Another doctor said it looked like my body was fighting cancer, which I immediately said, but that should be a good thing, right? And he said, but not if it's fighting yourself. So this was a big wake-up call. This clearly seemed to be a big problem. It was really putting a spanner in the works in terms of getting pregnant, which was what I had intended to do. And I think all of the career women who think, oh, I'm so smart, I've done all my degrees, my graduate degree, I've got my career, now I'm in a financially secure position, and now let's have the baby at a time of my choosing, and it doesn't happen. That became my overriding goal, was to have a baby and to have a doctor say, this is probably not a good idea. Effectively, you're going to leave, if you manage to get pregnant, you're going to leave that baby motherless. So I decided at that point, the best thing to do was to just go into denial, right? Because it's a false positive and we know tests aren't always accurate. She didn't seem so convinced. Again, I got that sympathetic look. And I asked if I could do the test again. She agreed. And I left that with just a real desire, a drive to figure out what the problem was. And did as much research as I could on these autoimmune conditions and discovered that inflammation was at their root. So you may have heard people talk about inflammaging, so premature aging because of too much inflammation. And that is exactly what my body was doing. I was chronologically 39, but biologically I was much, much older. And that's why my body was falling prey to these illnesses. So I saw a book by Dr. Barry Sears, and it was called The Anti-Inflammatory Zone Diet. I did everything. I even made my own almond milk. I went off of gluten. I went off of dairy. I ate more fresh vegetables and fruit. I made sure that I wasn't getting processed foods. I was having clean oils, especially olive oil. And lo and behold, I went back. I had the test again. And she said, well, good news. It must have been a blip.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. Wait a second. I thought I was supposed to take these boxes of drugs. There are all these syringes filled with this immune suppressant that I have to inject into my belly. Anybody who's ever had to inject stuff into themselves, whether because of IVF or because of
Mhm.
autoimmunity, it's really not fun. It's
Right.
not fun. You get little track marks on your belly. Sometimes the needle goes in nicely. Sometimes you feel it. You know you're going to get a bruise. It's not nice. And I just thought, but wait a second, if I was able to do it, what about everybody else who gets those boxes of drugs? Because most of them are not going to try. Most of them are going to lie back and say, they're going to roll over
Yep.
and say, right, this is the expert. And therefore, I should just accept my fate. So I have over the years met many of those people. And as those autoimmune drugs begin to stop working, they each will work for around 18 months. You cycle to the next one. And basically, at the end, you're on methotrexate, which is a chemo drug. So for women then who are trying to get pregnant and are in methotrexate, it's very hard. So I must say that I was a bit angry that no one had said to me, well, in addition to taking these drugs, you could also investigate changing your diet, your lifestyle.
Right.
One other thing that I did, which was an allopathic intervention, and which was very novel at the time, was called intravenous immunoglobulin. And I did 2 rounds of that. Each one was around 12,000 US dollars. And that is probably also part of what helped put my immune system back into balance. I mean, I don't know. I threw the kitchen sink at it. I didn't have time to be scientific and say, right, let's just do one at a time. I just threw everything in.
Right. How long was it between making that lifestyle change and your diagnosis to going back to the doctor to getting retested?
I've tried to look back and figure out exactly how long it was. It was between 3 and 6 months. I can't,
So
I
not
can't.
that long.
Oh no, not long at all. Not long at all.
Wow.
And
Wow.
that's the beauty of the human body. Actually, if you can just bring the body back into balance, it actually knows what to do.
What an incredible journey.
Yeah.
Just
So,
incredible.
yeah. And then I did manage to get pregnant without any of the IVF, donor eggs, the many acupuncture treatments as I was having, embryos put back into me. Anybody who's done that knows it's a gauntlet, really.
Yeah. Well, what a wonderful ending to a really horrifying, start to family planning.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
I'm very blessed with both an adopted daughter and a biological daughter who came to me at age 43. So anyone listening who thinks they might be, their opportunity may have passed. I know women who've been 47 when they've given
Mhm.
birth to very healthy babies.
I just think in general, women are waiting longer anyway. They're getting their careers going and finding that time to really discover who they are before they become a mom. A lot of
Yeah.
my female clients are in family planning. They're all in their mid to upper 30s, which, I was very young. I was 24. So we were talking earlier before we hopped on the podcast, which has more pros and cons, being young and kind of dumb and having all your babies, or being older and wiser and being a little bit more overly concerned about how to raise your baby. So
Or
plus
you
and
might say
minuses.
young and energetic and sparky, as opposed to older, fatigued, and, and competitive.
Right, right. So how did that journey lead you to finding
Spermidine.
spermidine?
Well, so as you mentioned, I moved to Oxford, England, and my husband is from Oxford. So we came here, and just on the playground with my girls, I would start talking to other mothers and fathers and ask them what they did, and they would tell me about the amazing science they were working on. And I'd say, wow, that's amazing. When is that going to be available on the market? And they'd say, oh, well, no, it's all just, I'm publishing papers right now. And I think, but wait, this is breakthrough science. We need to get a company going here. We need to get this to market. And they'd say, oh, well, I'm not sure. And I'd say, have you raised any money? Well, no, not yet. It's very complicated. We've got to work with the university. It's just too much trouble. And I said, well, what if I raise the money for you?
Hmm.
And that was the start of becoming the fundraiser for a number of Oxford University spin-out companies. But I was only interested in regenerative medicine. So stem cells, stem cell expansion, circadian rhythm, and also ketones, which are very interesting.
Hmm.
So I began to do that, and I started collaborating with Oxford Science Innovation, which is a big fund here in Oxford. And one of the guys there said, he knew about my journey. He knew that I was a health coach. And he said, Leslie, there's a scientist here that I really think you need to meet. She's an immunologist, a German immunologist named Katja Simon, and she's working with this really cool molecule named Spermidine. It's got a lot of potential and it does a lot, but I don't think, they'll never get a patent off of it. And because it's just, you can't patent something like this. We make it in our bodies. It's in every single plant. You can't make a patent. And he said, but maybe you could do a product, just educating people on it. And that would be your point of differentiation. So I went to meet Katja. It turned out that she was old friends with one of my Berkeley housemates, who was also German. And we really hit it off. And the more that I learned about spermidine's ability to slow aging, whether slowing the aging of the immune system or slowing the aging of the heart or the brain or the skin or the hair, and actually rejuvenating all of these things, the more I thought this really needs to get out there because it's safe, right? That's
Hmm.
always the
Hmm.
biggest question. You have a new drug. Gosh, is this thing safe? And we know what happened with the opioid crisis. Everybody's, oh, it's very safe, right? 500,000 people dead later, we now know
Right.
not true. So food is a lot safer. And there had already been some human trials which showed that, an amount of about 1 milligram, which is what we have in our dose, improves cognition in those with subjective cognitive decline. So I thought, well, let's give it a shot. And it wasn't available in the United States. I actually initially just tried to buy some from my mom from a company that I had discovered in Europe, but they wouldn't ship to the United States. So that was really why I wanted to bring it to the US market.
Hmm. Okay. So I know there's a really cool history about spermidine being discovered over like 330 years ago.
Yeah.
Because the name spermidine, if you don't know what we're talking about, which of course in the beginning I didn't know what it was, what a silly name for a molecule.
Yeah, it is. So that name was actually, the name spermine was first given by a Dutch father of biology, Antony van Leeuwenhoek, in the 1600s, when he had a microscope, and you can imagine boys and their toys. Oh, I've got this great new magnifying glass. What am I going to put under it? Well, I'll put my hair, I'll put some saliva, put a leaf, put some urine. Oh, let's put some semen there, right? And so he put this under the microscope, and when the semen dried, he could see these crystals, and he didn't know what they were, but he called them spermine. And then fast forward, a few hundred years later, there was another crystal which was different, which they then called spermidine. So that is it's just kind of unfortunate, really. And in fact, all of the polyamines have some pretty unfortunate names. Polyamines are actually needed in order for cells to grow and survive and thrive. So they're very, very important, but they have names like putrescine, right? Putrid, putrescine,
Right.
cadaverine, right? You keep looking at this, you're like, oh, sperm, cadaver, putrid, not nice at all. But they are very important for human health. They are found in abundance in semen. And it's because they're very small. Normally, DNA will wrap around a histone bond, which is big, but spermidine is very tiny. So you basically compress it. And that allows then the sperm to get that important information into the egg. And once that egg is fertilized, you've got all of the dad's DNA there, which has been very compactly inserted in. It's also found in abundance in human breast milk. And the reason why is because it helps, we believe, with sealing the lining of the gut. So you probably know the lining of the gut is only one cell thick. You have all of these sort of loosely held together cells. In order to tighten them up, Spermidine helps tighten them up. You probably know about zonulin, which causes them to release, and then Spermidine will help overcome that issue with zonulin and tighten things up so that the baby is then able to eventually eat solids, right? So infants have the highest concentration of Spermidine in their bodies. And again, the reason why is because they need that in order to grow. So it's absolutely critical to cell growth.
So do men and women both have spermidine in them? Because if you're saying that it's found in breast milk, does that mean?
Yep. Spermidine is found in breast milk.
Right. But what if a woman's not lactating, right? So is it still in the woman, or is it only in a woman during that time?
So we all manufacture spermidine in our tissues and in our gut biome from infancy until we die. We will have some amount of spermidine in us. The highest concentrations will be as infants. When we are lactating as mothers, yes, it is extremely high. And if you are not lactating, unfortunately, you will have much less in your body. But of course, a woman, you have 5 children, so you know what happens if you don't actually express that milk. It's not as if we can retain it, right? We would get engorged. It would be horrible. It's very, very painful. Yeah, as you know. And as I know, I can't forget how awful it was when that happened. And so, you do need to get rid of that. Men actually have a bit of a superpower here because they are able, if they were to use some of the old Taoist breath techniques, they would be able to tell their internal pharmacy, okay, make a lot of spermidine because we need it for semen. As they get to that point of ejaculation and release, if they are able to hold that in and recirculate that, they're essentially increasing the amount of production of the body, and they're able to reabsorb that, which is why I call it a bit of a superpower. That is something we women cannot do if we're breastfeeding because of that engorgement problem.
Okay. And what about if a man has a vasectomy? Does that mean that his spermidine from that point on will even decrease more?
That's a really good question. And so let's think about this. So if you've got a vasectomy, you simply have cut the tubing to the urethra. So it is not that you can't produce it. You would be able to produce it. You just, well, maybe it would be even better because you wouldn't be able to lose it. I mean, I'm not an expert here on male physiology, but I'm just trying to work through this. Okay, he potentiates it, but he's not able to actually release it in ejaculation. So I think that might be the answer, but don't hold me to it.
So then you started taking spermidine before you started your company, and
I did.
Did you start taking it to see how it worked on yourself?
Yes, I did. So talking to Katja, I knew that it was for sale in Europe. So I ordered some. I was on it for about 1.5 years, and I knew that it would do good things for me under the hood. I did also notice that I had a slight bump up in my deep sleep, and thought, okay, that's good. I know this is good for me. I'm just going to keep taking this. And then when I got our spermidine in, I just replaced that one with ours. Didn't think anything of it. Ours does have a prebiotic in it, though, which will selectively feed the strains of bacteria in the gut that also produce spermidine. And so when I started taking ours, the first thing that I noticed, and I wasn't expecting, was that my eyelashes grew
Mm.
much, much longer. And I kept looking, I wear contacts. And so as I was putting my contact in my eye, I just thought, that's really strange. They look longer. Why? I've never really had long eyelashes, so I was not expecting that at all. And a few other things like that happened. My hairdresser said, "Oh, you've got this like new baby hair growth," and also with the lipophagy. So, spermidine activates cellular renewal through a process called autophagy or autophagy, which in Greek means self-eating. So it's like Pac-Man, eating the bad parts of the cell, the dysfunctional organelle, the old mitochondria. We want new shiny mitochondria that produce lots of energy. And in addition to autophagy, it does virophagy, where it eats viruses. It does mitophagy, where it eats old mitochondria. And it does something called lipophagy, where it does the same thing with lipids. And I've been battling cellulite since I was about 16. And I happened to catch myself in the mirror one day with the bright sunlight right on my thighs. That is just the worst light ever. It's so unforgiving. And I thought, is it my eyes? Are my eyes getting bad? Because I don't see that weird dimple that I've always had there. What's going on? So I started noticing things like this. And when I asked Katja, look, Katja, it's kind of weird, but I seem to not have this funny dimple on my thigh like I used to, but I feel like I'm the same weight. I know I'm the same weight. And she just said, oh, that's the lipophagy. And she didn't think anything of it. That's just lipophagy. But,
Wow.
but that's actually a big deal if you
It's
have
a
struggled with
really,
this.
yeah, that's a really big deal. And I am going to shut my shade because I'm getting that awful sunlight on me.
Oh,
The
yeah.
Chicago sun is coming out. Hang on one sec.
No problem.
All right.
Just have a swig of my bone broth here.
Yeah, it's still super bright, but I mean, I'm grateful for the sunlight, but
Yeah, it's
yeah.
dazzling.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about autophagy for a second, because I did do a lot of reading on spermidine and autophagy. And autophagy, the way that people get into the state of autophagy is through fasting.
Yeah.
Right.
So
we want to always have these extended overnight fasts. Stop eating after dinner and don't eat your first meal, until maybe 12 to sometimes 18 hours later, depending on who you are and your goals.
Yeah.
And so I thought it was really, really interesting that spermidine gets you into that state of autophagy
it's a fasting. Yeah. A fasting mimetic. Yeah.
Yeah. So speak to that for the listeners.
Right. So many people may know that, as you pointed out, you can fast. You can just withhold food, and that's why breakfast is called breakfast. You're breaking your fast. So all of us fast all the time, because when we sleep, we're doing that. But fasting for longer periods of time can confer certain benefits. And as you mentioned, you could do that for 12 hours. You could do that for 18 hours. Some people like to do 5-day water fast. Some people like to do them with bone broth, like I've got here, or coffee. And many people report feeling more energized, more clear-headed, having better skin, having, obviously they're going to drop some weight, but dropping fat, because you would go into ketosis at that point in time, and you would be burning ketones instead of glycogen, right? Your liver would have given up all of its glucose. So there are benefits to that, but I am a hypothyroid patient. And if I fast, yes, yep. And a lot of women are, especially as we age, it's something that both men and women should be thinking about. As a hypothyroid patient, if I fast for too long, what happens is my body says, no, this is not a fantastic thing you should be doing in a cave in Sedona where you're having an enlightening experience. You are in a famine situation.
Yep.
And we are going to downregulate your metabolism and hold on to your fat so that you are able to survive this famine, right?
Yep.
And so when I started fasting and, as a bulletproof coach, I was doing all the things and I learned an awful lot doing that. But for me, as a hypothyroid patient, I learned that I needed to be especially careful. And as I was going through menopause, I noticed if I was trying to fast, what it would lead to was a lot of hot flashes. It did not serve my particular biology. I can't speak for everybody else, but I knew that wasn't right. So, spermidine is interesting because it does not require you to do those extended fast, and
Mm-hmm.
yet it still triggers this amazing cellular renewal and recycling process of autophagy without that feeling of I'm starving and I'm actually holding on to my fat too. This is working against me.
Right. I think that's really interesting because I'm the same as you. I'll do an overnight fast, but anywhere between 9 and 11 in the morning, I
Yeah.
have to eat, and I have to
Yeah.
eat a nice amount of
Yeah.
food. I do.
Exactly.
Yeah. I like working out in a fasted state, but immediately afterwards, I have to replenish with fuel, and that is in the form of a lot of food. I
Yeah.
mean, and so I really, in fact, I'm almost at 4 weeks in taking Primeadine, and I would
Mm,
have to say that I, for the past couple 2 3 months, I
mm,
felt as if my body was not burning my own fat as a source of fuel, even though I do
mhm,
not eat carbohydrates.
mhm,
And I've put on like 5 pounds, which for me, I never gain weight like that, right?
mm.
And so the last month, it's come off.
Oh,
And the only
interesting.
and the
Yeah.
only thing I've changed is taking Primeadine. I've continued my overnight fast,
Yeah.
but it has, I do believe that maybe that's one of the things that I'm noticing.
Yeah, that's something that we have had people report. And even my uncle next door in the state next door to you, he's in Indianapolis. He had 10 pounds he could just never lose. And he was able to get rid of it with Primeadine. So it's probably the lipophagy that is doing that.
Yeah. Hmm.
And I don't have any studies on that because none have been done, but we do have people say that, that it has helped them in their own N=1 situations.
Interesting. So aging is the number one risk factor for disease. And in the published medical literature that I've read about spermidine, it's noted that spermidine hits on 5 or 6 of the 9 hallmarks of aging.
Mm.
What are the hallmarks of aging, or which ones are affected by spermidine in a positive way, and how? And most people out there don't even know what the hallmarks of aging are, right?
Okay, right. So the hallmarks of aging, that paper was based on an earlier paper about the hallmarks of cancer. So,
Mm.
everybody wanted to know what causes cancer. And so this paper was really saying, based on everything we know, and I think it was published in 2014, what are all the things that lead to aging? This is not to say these are the only things that lead to aging, but these were the things that were known at that time. And those 9 hallmarks included things that you would expect, like, epigenetic changes, mitochondrial dysfunction, stem cell dysfunction. I think we all know stem cells are important, right? We want healthy stem cells. We don't want dysregulated stem cells. There were things like impaired proteostasis. So that's a bit of a fancy word. So proteostasis just means proper protein folding and function within the cell. So proteins in the cell are important because they
Mhm.
act as transporters and help maintain cellular homeostasis. So you just want, I always say, uh, autophagy is like Marie Kondo coming into your cells. And this is one of the things she does with impaired protein folding. She folds everything beautifully in the drawers,
Right,
right? So
right.
that's impaired protein folding. Impaired intercellular communication and also telomere shortening. So, did I do all 6 epigenetic changes? Impaired proteostasis, mitochondrial dysfunction, stem cell dysfunction, impaired intercellular communication, and telomere shortening. Spermine inhibits a seventh hallmark, which is altered nutrient sensing, but that is a polyamine that is also in Primeadine, but it is a different polyamine.
Wait, we lost connection for
Oh, okay.
a couple seconds. Go back on that.
So go back to, so just to do a quick rundown of what Spermidine inhibits, it inhibits epigenetic changes, impaired protein folding,
right,
mitochondrial dysfunction, stem cell dysfunction, impaired intercellular communication, and telomere shortening. Spermine, so Primeadine, has 3 polyamines: spermidine, spermine, and putrescine. They're all part of a recycling loop, and putrescine is a precursor to spermine and spermidine. Spermine itself inhibits a 7th hallmark, which is altered nutrient sensing.
Okay, and altered nutrient sensing means what exactly?
So there are 4 pathways of nutrient sensing that regulate metabolism and influence our aging. So there are key protein groups like IGF-1, mTOR, sirtuins, and AMPK. And we say that they're nutrient sensing because their nutrient levels influence their activity in the body. And if they are dysregulated in any way, we don't get enough of them from our food, then we get this hallmark of aging.
So that's really,
they age us faster.
So that's really interesting to me, and here's why. I am a huge proponent of taking the Spectracell Micronutrient test. I actually just did a podcast with them as well. And have you heard of the Spectracell?
I've heard of Spectracell. Yes.
Okay, so this micronutrient test is really cool because what it does is it tells you how your cellular health is. Are you absorbing all of the nutrients that you are putting into your body? So for example, the reason I took it a while back was because my hair started shedding profusely once I started going through perimenopause about 3.5 years ago. And we're health coaches. We do a lot of the right things. And I was so flabbergasted as to why this was happening. My hormones, although going through perimenopause, your hormones are completely on a roller coaster ride. We were trying to get them as balanced as nicely as possible, getting my thyroid, which I only have half a thyroid, getting that as balanced as possible, and doing all the other lifestyle things, right? Yet still, for some reason, my cells were not absorbing the nutrients that I was giving it through my diet. I've been a carnivore for the last 2 years, so eating a very highly nutrient dense, bioavailable diet. And when I got my results back, oh my gosh, I had like 15 functional deficiencies, mostly in all the things that you would find in animal protein. And I was thinking,
that's
shocking. Like, why is this happening? Well, it probably has a lot to do with my double variant MTHFR. I'm homozygous for that, which we talked about before the podcast. So that makes things very difficult. It means I have fewer methyl donors. It means those pathways, that MTHFR gene is only working at possibly a 30% capacity versus 100% as a homozygous carrier. And so I was having all of these roadblocks per se, these hurdles within my body, within those pathways, within the cells. And so I thought the nutrient sensing was such a cool hallmark of aging to hit, which was another reason why I really wanted to take your product.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I have to say, as a health coach myself, when you mentioned these things, the first thing I thought of was hydrochloric acid. Did they test the acid levels in the gut? Because, you're not on like proton pump inhibitors or anything like that. No H. pylori, no candida, because that obviously changes the acidity in the gut. Wow. Interesting.
I know. So needless to say, I need to take a lot of supplementation and be very careful with toxins around me and
Mm.
really live a very intentional lifestyle. And I have to say, while I've been on this journey after the micronutrient test, I do feel better. And you get it every 6 months. It's only good for 6 months. And then
Mm.
you can see what other deficiencies you have some gone away or some
Yep.
stable and are some still there, and what to do with the next steps. But the Spermidine, really, I'm really hoping that that sort of is my last piece to my puzzle. Everybody has a
Yay.
different puzzle, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, spermidine will certainly help with the hair shedding issue. And I'm not saying that it is the only thing. And with hair loss, it is often a multifactorial
Yes.
issue. But spermidine is a big piece of the puzzle. Thyroid is another big piece. So I always tell people who say they are experiencing hair loss, immediately, don't talk to me, go to your doctor, preferably a functional medicine doctor who will do a comprehensive panel, blood and urine, to look at what is going on with your hormones. And I don't just mean estrogen and progesterone, but also testosterone for women, because testosterone is linked
Right.
to, strong hair. Also looking at melatonin if you can, because melatonin is actually a piece of the hair puzzle too. And they have actually used topical melatonin to help with alopecia areata. So vitamin D is another one, but spermidine is also part of this. And that is because of the fact that it puts hair follicles into the anagen or growth phase of the hair life cycle. So there are basically three parts to it: the anagen, which is growth, then the catagen, which is resting, and then the telogen or telogen effluvium one, which is shedding. And you can tell, if you ever pluck a hair out, you can always tell what stage that hair is in by looking at the tip, not the tip, but the root. And if the root of it is round, then you know that's in the effluvium stage. And if it is shaped like a J, like a little hook, like a little fish hook, that is in the anagen phase. So that hair really shouldn't have been plucked out. So that's how you tell the difference. And spermidine allows for hair to go into the anagen phase for longer. When they've done studies in petri dishes with human hair follicles, and they put spermidine in, they can see after only 6 days that those hair follicles, 26% more of those hair follicles go into the anagen phase. So, you've got a quarter more of your hair switching over to anagen. We don't know if more happens after 6 days, because that was just the experiment that was done. What also happens is that your epithelial stem cells are active then. So again, anything with stem cells, these are good things. There is a reason why cosmetic manufacturers are putting like plant stem cells into creams and talking about this, because we need them. We need them to be there. And finally, it is only in the anagen phase when something called melanogenesis, or melanin or pigment production, happens. So a lot of my girlfriends have, because I'll be 57 in June, all my friends are like, how is it possible that you are not dyeing your hair? This is really frustrating. It costs me over $100 a month. And now as I get
Yeah.
older, I'm doing it like every 4 weeks, and I'm doing my roots.
Hmm.
And COVID was horrible because I had I was like a raccoon.
Hmm.
So I did do a few videos on YouTube on Leslie's New Prime, which is my YouTube channel, and just talking about gray hair. And I ended up learning probably more than I should about gray hair and how to reverse it. But spermidine is a piece of the puzzle there too, because of the fact that it promotes this melanin production, which obviously we want. The older we get, the harder it is for our body to withstand some of the reactive oxygen species in our life, whether from stress, whether from alcohol, whether from a lifetime of smoking. And, there are things like glutathione, which are good for that. But just getting, melanin production, just ramping that production up again is super important.
Does spermidine also have an effect on biotin or keratin production?
Yeah, on keratin production as well. Yeah, so it will upregulate keratin production.
Mm,
Biotin is different. Biotin is B7, and I don't know if that actually, I've never seen anything that says that it increases that, but biotin is also very important for hair. B vitamins generally, you would want to make sure that you had,
mhm.
B5 is very good for gray hair. B7 is good. You don't want low B12 either. You don't want too high. I must say, and you will know this as a health coach, it's always the Goldilocks zone. That's why we
Yes,
always tell people test, test, test. It is
right,
important. If you're going to go down the path of supplementing, you can't do this mindlessly. You must
right,
get a baseline and test every 6 months. Because if
right.
you go out of that Goldilocks zone, then you go into a zone of toxicity. You don't want to be deficient. You don't want to be toxic. Um, so then in addition to that, those B vitamins, vitamin D is also important for pigmentation too.
Right. So this is not just a one magic pill solution. So
No.
as as my listeners can hear, you have to stack things, right? You have to
Yeah.
stack your lifestyle with your supplements, and your supplements are not the supplements that your next door neighbor is taking
Yeah.
or your best friend is taking. It's what you're supposed to be taking based on certain tests that you have taken for yourself.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, I'm sure you have this all the time. I have it all the time with my clients. They come and we'll go over their supplements and I'll say, well, which doctor told you to take that? No, it wasn't a doctor. I read it in a magazine while I was waiting to see my doctor.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yes, it's a little bit of an investment finding the right functional medicine doctor or naturopathic doctor who can help you figure out what is right for you, what is your equation, but so worth the money. So you're not
Mhm.
going down a path that isn't really meant for you.
Yeah, exactly. In the same way that you would not say, oh, right, my neighbor has a dress this size, like size 12, I'm a size
Right.
8, right? I'll just go wear my neighbor's dress. That would be ridiculous, right? And
Right.
we are so unique. And it is again, very important to make sure we don't become toxic in something.
Yeah.
Copper is important for hair color, but too much copper, not enough zinc, those go out of balance. That is problematic too. So
Right.
very, very important to measure. What is nice about spermidine, though, and I've been taking supplements basically since my autoimmune diagnoses. What I like about spermidine, though, is that it covers a lot of bases. So there is only one other compound I know of that hits 6 of the hallmarks of aging, and that is an immune suppressant that transplant patients take called rapamycin.
Mhm.
And I looked at that and I just said, well, I don't know. I know other biohackers want to take that. Former autoimmune patient was given the chance to take immune suppressants. Sorry, I'm going to say no to that. Just,
Yeah.
that's just me, right? But we also know that in the longevity blue zones of Okinawa, Ikaria, Sardinia, people have extremely high intakes of spermidine. And if you test their blood plasma levels of spermidine, they are high. So there is something about these centenarians, and it probably is a combination of good gut biome that allows them to continue to produce spermidine as they get older, because spermidine is produced in our tissues and our gut biome, and we get it then from our diet, so exogenously. And they're also taking it in. These folks are producing it in the gut biome and they're taking it in their diet. And you look at those spots, Nicoya in Costa Rica and Loma Linda in California, people are eating tons of plants. And plants have just very high amounts of spermidine. Now, I know you're a carnivore coach. For carnivore, those on the carnivore diet, I would suggest chicken liver. So there isn't a lot of spermidine in other meat, but it is abundant in chicken liver. So for you, that would be a really nice choice. And I remember when I was a kid, my grandmother would say, oh, you have to eat your chicken liver. I'd say, no, it's disgusting. She'd say, but it's so healthy. Now we
Wait,
know.
yeah, you faded out for a few seconds when you were talking about what plants have spermidine in them.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sorry.
no, that's okay. But can you just, because that actually was my next question for you.
Ah,
Where
okay.
are we going to find spermidine in food?
Okay, so you can find spermidine in great abundance in plants, and that's why these populations of long-lived centenarians in the longevity blue zones, they have
Yep.
an overwhelmingly plant diet. So things like shiitake mushroom would be terrific. Things like natto, and I'm just going to show you. A natto is fermented soybeans, and for those who have problem with histamine, well, that's going to be an issue because anything fermented is an issue. But just the way the Japanese live, this is a snack food in Japan. So this is natto, dried natto that is flavored with seaweed and salt. This one is dried natto that is flavored with soy sauce. And people pick this up instead of a Mars bar, right? And you're thinking, well, it's so easy for them to get tons of spermidine in their diet because look what they're buying, right? It's not McDonald's, it's this stuff. So natto has extremely high quantities. Wheat germ has a lot. However, it also has omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids. And this is why bakers don't want wheat germ in their bread because it goes rancid very, very fast. And if you put wheat germ into bread, then that goes rancid, doesn't have a long shelf life. So a bit of a double-edged sword with wheat germ. Just trying to think some of the
But
other things.
a couple things. One is I also read that spermidine was found in aged cheeses, like blue
Yes.
cheeses.
Yes, you can find it in aged cheeses. Cheddar, you can find it in there. So something for the folks in the Cheddar Valley here in the United Kingdom. You can find it in Parmesan. So I know Dr. Stephen Gundry, he actually suggests taking the rind of Parmesan and putting it into a risotto dish with, say, shiitake mushrooms and peas. And that is a nice way to actually increase the amount of spermidine you take. The only thing with cheese is it can raise cholesterol. And so a lot of doctors are not going to be happy if you have high cholesterol already and then you start taking it in this way. So yes, definitely in there. In fermented foods, they will be there. Peas are a great source. So anyone who likes mushy peas, which is part of the national supper in Scotland, mushy peas, that's a good thing.
But if you don't want to eat those foods, like as a carnivore, I don't eat a lot of those foods. The cheeses, yes, but in very moderately.
Yeah.
Is taking the supplement also just good enough?
No, I would not say that it's good enough. I think you really do need to get it from your diet. So I would suggest chicken liver, honestly.
Okay.
And a prebiotic is good for potentiating your body's own production of it. Our spermidine has 1 milligram of spermidine in it, along with the prebiotic. If you look at the diets of people in the UK and the US, the average person has around 8 milligrams that they take. It's not a lot, but then look at places like in Okinawa and it's over 50 milligrams. It's a huge number, right? It's an order of magnitude greater. And so it's important to, if you can get it in your diet, it is, it's an important thing to do.
Okay. And then is in your supplement, is it derived from wheat germ? And then
it is derived from wheat germ.
Right. So how does that fare with, I would think that people with celiac disease cannot take that supplement.
No, they cannot take it. They cannot take it. And it's actually the reason why we've come out with this. I just happen to have this bottle here. We've come out with this gluten-free version, which is made from chlorella and Japanese lime, shikawasa. and turmeric, because this is something that they can actually take. So the original version with the prebiotic has 3 polyamines: spermidine, spermine, and putrescine. This one has only spermidine and putrescine, so no spermine. And for those who have SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, I would not suggest taking the gluten version, because you will find that it may give you gastric upset. So for them, taking the gluten-free version would be the way to go, right?
Very interesting. So I've been gluten-free for, I don't know, 15, 20 years, or
Yeah, that's like me.
Yeah. And your product does not, I'm not celiac, but your product has not had any negative impact on my gut thus far.
Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. And that's the
Yep.
same for me, and the same for Amy Lamott, who's one of our advisors and nutrigenomics advisor in Hong Kong. She and I both carry one of the celiac genes each, and we have really cut out gluten in our diet since, well, I don't know, since the early 2000s, both of us. And we don't have any gastric upset. But if someone were to take it and did feel it, I would want to know if they were celiac, or if they had some kind of SIBO, something else going on in the gut. Yeah.
That's good to know. I want to circle back to the 9 hallmarks of aging and talk about epigenetic alterations and how spermidine positively impacts that. So epigenetic alterations refers to our lifestyle that either turns on or turns off certain genes.
Yeah, well, it's really just bringing them back to kind of homeostasis. So if you're smoking, we know, we can see that your different genes are going to be, turned on that shouldn't be turned on, right? Same for alcohol. Drinking too much alcohol, we can see that if you were to take a test with, say, a group like Chronomics or something. And all that this would be doing is allowing the body to, rather than switching those genes, those bad genes on, would then prevent them from doing that, or make it more difficult for those bad genes to be switched on.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is actually
right. But that is not an excuse. That is not an excuse out there to not change your lifestyle habits if they are negatively impacting your life.
No, and the other operative thing is that this is not a silver bullet. There are no silver bullets. This only can sort of support the body, right? You can't say someone who's a smoker, oh, great, I'm a smoker, and now this will stop those epigenetic changes from happening. Well, if you've been smoking for 40 years, I don't know what we're going to do about the other stuff. You really need to give this up, right?
Yeah.
So this has a mitigating effect. It does not necessarily have a reversing effect.
Right.
So it's supportive.
And so how long, if somebody wants to try your product, how long do you suggest they try it for, so that they can see if it's something that's working for them?
Well, we usually say, 3 months, 90 days ought to be enough. But then a lot of people don't have these trackers like the Oura Ring or Fitbit or something else. People who are really paying attention to their bodies, who really, they're monitoring, they notice after 30 days. And it'll be things like what you were saying. Oh, that's interesting. I dropped those other 5 pounds.
Yeah.
Or, oh, my sleep is better. That's interesting.
Right.
And so other people, we've noticed it takes 6 months. So we had 2 customers. One was 91, now 92. The other one was 79. And they were just taking it because they knew it was good, right? And a lot of times we do this. Oh, well, take vitamin D. It's good for me. And after about 5 months, 2 things happened, and it was with their hair. So the woman, her hair, all of the roots started coming in dark again. So she had sort of a dishwater blonde color before. And so that was very strange because it was all the original color at the roots, but at the ends it was white. So she had short hair. And so you could really see it. It was almost like an Alice band, that was
Mm.
darker,
Mhm.
right? And then the rest was white. And her husband, he has this bald patch here, and he started growing in these wispy hairs which were standing straight up because when they're
Mhm.
short, they, at some point,
Right.
they just do stand straight up. But then he began to get, he's been white since she said his 40s, these dark tufts, black tufts. And that was his original hair color was black, which was very strange. So for them, it was 5 months. And I think it depends on everyone's needs.
Right.
They're obviously much older, therefore, it might take much longer to see benefits. I think it really does partly depend on your biological age.
So I forget where I read it, but I did read somewhere that said spermidine really is an optimal supplement to take for people over the age of 50, that people younger really are not going to benefit from it, which makes
This,
sense when you talk about the 9 hallmarks of aging. But then I also read that it enhances athletic performance.
and it enhances fertility. So I think I certainly have said in earlier podcasts, oh, look, I don't want people wasting their money or effort, right? So I know for sure it works in people over 50. But since then, biohackers being biohackers, I have had a number of young people who have taken the product and said, oh, this really helps. So Caleb Barnes, who talks a lot about cognition and neurological issues, said, oh, it really helped her, her brain function. I've had other young people say it helps with mood, which I thought was very interesting. And I know that in studies, this helps with cognition for sure. I just didn't expect it to help with younger people. And it does make me wonder what their biological age is, or if something else is going on in their lives that is making it harder for their neurons to fire, or maybe just that autophagy in the brain is not able to happen as efficiently as it ought to be.
Okay, repeat the last 10 seconds because we lost you
Sorry,
again.
I saw that. Oh, I'm sorry. Oxford has terrible Wi-Fi. I'm really sorry about
That's
this.
okay.
Um, so did you hear me talk about Kayla Barnes?
That's where you were just starting and you
Okay.
faded out.
Okay. So Caleb Barnes is an influencer who talks a lot about neurocognition. And she's 20, 27, 28, 29, around there. And I was very surprised to hear that she said it improved her cognition because she's so young. I have had other individuals say that it has helped their mood. Now, I know that there are studies that demonstrate that it does help with cognition. And I know that because we are bringing spermidine in externally, that is going to preserve people's stores of SAMe, which helps with mood. So I know these two things can happen. I just didn't expect them to happen with much younger,
Hmm.
chronologically younger people, which makes me wonder what is going on in their bodies. Is autophagy not happening for them as much as it could? Because obviously, once you introduce an autophagy inducer like spermidine, they're feeling the benefits. So I think it really has to do with biological age. It has to do with things like, you mentioned you're homozygous for the MTHFR gene, right?
Right.
We each have our own, let's call them vulnerabilities. And once we're aware of them, we can take steps to mitigate against them. And if someone's vulnerability happens to be less autophagy, then this would be a good thing for them, even if they are younger. And it does seem to help. It does help with fertility. There have been some interesting studies on fertility. One out of Korea recently was fascinating because it helped with oogenesis. So it helped with oogenesis, which is egg basically maturation of eggs for
Mm-hmm.
women. So as a former fertility patient, that meant a lot to me. It
Right.
was like, ooh, maybe I should have been taking a lot of Natto then. Should have been doing what
Right.
my mother told me to do.
I wonder what the effects on kids with ADHD spermidine would have
I don't know. That's interesting. I'm not
because of
sure.
the neurological benefits that you were just talking about. So that just made me think about that. Because of my
Yeah.
5 kids, I've got half a house full of ADHDers.
Yeah. So it's very interesting. I guess you know that Dr. David Perlmutter has a book coming
Yep.
out called Drop Acid on uric acid. And I don't know. I don't know how spermidine fits into that, to be really honest. And I would want to also, again, make sure that the source was clean, so there wasn't too much of a histamine load, because
Right.
maybe those folks are having an issue with histamine.
Yep. That's interesting. Yep. But for the elderly, you're saying that you're not too old to start this.
Oh my gosh, no. And you can see, you can actually visibly see the changes. So I've had other people here in Oxford. This is a town where your mind is your career, right? It's full of academics. This is a
Right.
university town. And people saying that they're thinking more clearly, that they can remember things, they're remembering their words, but also that their nails aren't splitting, or that they've had a nail that just couldn't heal and that it's healed, which I found absolutely fascinating.
That is fascinating. Natalie Needham, she talked about that too in my podcast with her, that she had a nail that was constantly splitting. And after taking Primeadine, it stopped. And I actually have the same nail as her that does it. So I'm curious to see what happens.
Really?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay,
Yeah.
good. Yes,
So we'll
definitely
see.
use that.
Yeah.
That, because I have had people in their 90s, in their 70s, who've said that these split nails have healed.
Yeah,
And
because
that'll be because of the keratin.
yeah, I want my mom to start taking it too. So she said, all right, you give it a shot for 3 months, see how it is, and then I'll take it. So
Excellent.
I'm a month in. So so obviously spermidine can be taken with other supplements, but are there any supplements that it shouldn't be taken with?
Well, think of it like a food. If there is something that you would not want to take with a food, then keep them apart. It's derived from wheat. So if there is something that you think will have a reaction with wheat, then keep it apart.
Okay.
The new product, which is chlorella based, has naturally occurring vitamin D and K2. I like the fact that they're together, but vitamin D, you'll know, we normally synthesize this in the morning. The body knows that if vitamin D is circulating in the body, oh, it must be morning. So this one should only be taken before sort of 2:00.
Oh, right. Because the other one, it says to take it right after dinner, and to take
exactly.
and to take it at the same time of day every day.
Yeah, because of
that's our routine.
And it seems to help with, we know spermidine helps reset circadian rhythm in older animals. And just because this has sort of two things a bit in opposition. So yes, spermidine will help with resetting the circadian rhythm, but the vitamin D really is a signal to the body that sunlight is present. That really should be taken when sunlight is present.
We just lost you a second.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, that's okay. All right. So I've got a couple more fun questions left before we end.
Good.
What are your top 3 biohacks for your anti-aging routine?
My top 3 biohacks. Okay. So, let me think. One of them I talk about probably too much. It's my Katsu device. So you know that as we age, frailty is a big problem for us. And it is something that will predispose us to, just early death. So keeping those muscles is very important. And so these are the bands. They're blood flow moderation bands. These are for the thighs. And they're attached to a pneumatic pump. And basically it will fill up with air, just like a blood pressure cuff. And then you just do some bicep curls, something really easy.
Well, how do you grip it?
Well, it goes, so this is for my leg, but you would normally put it around your arm and then it would come
Okay.
up, and then you would just do these curls, or you
Got
might have
it.
a very lightweight. And then when it's released, as that blood sort of shoots through like a hose, the signals go to the pituitary that says, oh my God, we have just messed up some muscle. We need to repair that muscle because we've been
Mhm.
lifting, 100 kilos. And the pituitary, it's again like potentiating the
Yep.
internal pharmacy. The pituitary then sends all this growth hormone to the limb to build that muscle. So people are always amazed when they feel my biceps, because I look so scrawny in some ways. And then they feel the bicep. They know that there's actually like a serious muscle there.
I love that. I mean, as we know, muscles are a longevity organ. I
Yeah.
always talk about
Yes.
sarcopenia. You've got to prioritize eating protein and
Yeah.
you've got to weight lift. So I love that's a
Yep.
great one.
Yep,
Love
yep.
that.
And you talk about protein. So in the morning, I have my coffee, I have collagen in there for
Mhm.
those amino acids, and I have a little raw cacao, but also healthy fats. So healthy fats are just so important. I really like my coconut MCTs. I know coconut oil is not for everybody. Some people are even allergic to it, but healthy fats, avocado oil is also a good one for me. And I love olive oil. So healthy fats. And then I suppose also bone broth, which
Mhm.
I'm sipping in this other mug here. And I know as a carnivore coach, you'll be into that. I love making my own bone broth,
Mhm.
just taking chicken feet and chicken necks and putting it in with a knob of turmeric and ginger and some carrots and celery and some apple cider vinegar. And, just cooking that for 24 hours and drinking that goodness.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to bake than people think. They get
Oh,
very
so easy.
intimidated by it, but you could even do it in a crock pot and then you don't
That's
even
what I
have
do.
to, yeah, it's super easy and so delicious. You store it in the freezer and you've got it for months.
Yep, yep. Or just even put it into an ice cube tray, right?
Yeah.
And then you freeze it and you've got like a terrific base for stir fries or, other things. It makes a really nice sauce. Or if you just want something quick, you just pop it into your mug, put some hot water on top, and you have a nice, healthy, hydrating and nourishing drink there.
Yeah. Well, Leslie, we are coming to a close, and what a wonderful conversation. I'm so grateful that you agreed to be on the podcast to share
Oh,
all this
thank
amazing
you.
information about spermidine and primeadine and what it took for you, for your journey that landed you in that place, meeting those people and bringing this to market for all of us to benefit from. So kudos to you for doing that. Because I know
Oh,
I
thank you.
had a food company before I became a health coach. And it is, you need a good set of running shoes because it is tough. It is a journey just
Yeah.
to have that idea of this product and then to bring it to market and make sure it's safe and effective for most people.
Yeah. Well, I think
Yeah.
sometimes, we just have to step up, and
Yep.
how cool to be able to inhibit aging. I often say that's our goal. We want to inhibit 1,000,000 years of aging. We
I mean,
get
you look beautiful. Like your skin is glowing, your hair is so shiny. I
Thank
mean,
you.
and you're a few years older than I am, but we're in our mid 50s and we're rocking it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Exactly. We
yeah.
got to walk the talk. I think that's right. And also I really think it's important. You may be a listener, maybe in a state of dis-ease at this moment in time, but have hope, because I was in a pretty bad
Yep.
state of disease,
Yeah.
and you can turn it around. The body is miraculous. And as you pointed out, it was between 3 or 6 months. I went back and I tested again and I did not have it. It
Right.
is,
Just
it is,
right.
it is within the body's ability to do this if we put it into the right circumstances.
Right. And it's just changing your mindset and not always listening to your doctor with their conventional, traditional medical verbiage, right? Always going to get other opinions and other perspectives on what could be going on. And you have to be your own self-advocate, and you have to be your own detective in terms of finding your equation. You can get help along the way through health coaches and functional medicine doctors, but we can only lead you to the water, and then you have to do the work. And it is work. It's work.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I have always said, meet your doctors halfway.
Yep.
Do not look to them for the solution. And if we can work hand in hand with our practitioners, then we will find the solutions we need.
Absolutely. So I will put in the show notes how to find Leslie, how to find her YouTube, her Instagram, her Facebook, all her amazing information. And I've watched your YouTube channel. Yes, you have such a great way of delivering information in terms that the general public can really understand. It's layman terms. It's not too scientific, but just scientific enough. And that's really helpful because people are often very intimidated by the world of functional medicine and alternative holistic approaches and not understanding. So kudos to you for doing that as well. And so I want to thank you again. Thank you to my listeners for joining in, and the show notes will have all sorts of goodies in there for you. Thank you, Leslie. Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, Jill. It's been such a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Lifestyle changes can be hard and overwhelming to make. By building your support team of functional medicine doctors, therapists, and health coaches, you can reach your optimal health goals. Be sure to check out my other podcasts. Until we meet again, stay healthy.